Hello. So this is Google Podcasts, and apparently they don't allow an audio only option for whatever reason. Um, well, my podcast, it's titled "My Thoughts," the life of. It's about my daily life, and there's three components of it that I wanted to discuss, and obviously we'll go into in the future podcasts. One is life as an autistic person, my perspective, how I view the world, and misconceptions about autism that I've encountered, that other people have encountered. Um, that's very significant for me because um, we're born autistic, basically, and we have to combat a lot of um, ignorance. There's a lot of people who don't know how to deal with an autistic person at all. They just think that we're being intransigent, or they treat us like we're stupid or something like that. Now, autistic people go on a whole range, and there's two things people really have to understand in order to understand anything about us. There's what we express, like empathy and every other human trait, intelligence, and what is going on inside, especially what we can express, like what we express to our circles, not necessarily to everyone else. And the two are usually very divergent in a healthy autistic person. Now, there's a lot of unhealthy autistic people. The reason for that is largely because of these misconceptions and brutal, just horrid ways of treating autistic people. Like there's some people who say, neurotypicals, who say that we should essentially work on our weaknesses, not work on our strengths, because we're deficient. Basically, at least that's the implication, and that's the way they treat it. It's just a disability. Well, it is a disability. That is true, but it's actually a neurological difference. It's not damage per se. Um, we think differently. We can be given the same information as someone else who is of equal intelligence to us. Um, and if the person's neurotypical, they're going to interpret it differently than we will, and vice versa. However, we aren't accepted. Our interpretation is not accepted as much as a neurotypical person's is, because neurotypicals can communicate very well with relatively well with one another. I mean, that too is a spectrum, of course. Some people are just awful at communication, and the same thing goes with autistic people. It's not like it's a it's not like it's a language that everyone's fluent in, and some autistic people are shy, some are outgoing. We run the whole gambit, and yes, intelligence varies. Although I have noticed it does seem to, for whatever reason, autism seems to be associated with higher potential intelligence, if you will. Not that everyone or most of us, unfortunately, live out our fullest potential, because we have this difficulty. We have various difficulties, and it's important not to treat this as an abstraction, because it isn't. It's a very real problem for us. The problem mostly is interacting with neurotypicals and maladjusted autistics as well, and there's plenty of those. We take things generally more personally. We have a more internal view of the world, even insofar as we're misunderstood, we have to keep our own counsel more than other people, so we have an internal view of the world, even if we're extroverts. There's a bit of a subtext going on at all times. Plus, the way we interpret the world is fundamentally different. It's not just a quirk. It's not just a little bit different. It's a lot different. And that's something that most people are coming around. I understand that, but most people still don't really get that. They're like, oh yeah, he's a little quirky, or she's a little quirky, whatever. I know he's autistic, and I know a lot about autistic. No, you don't know a lot about autistics, even if you lived with one. You don't necessarily know a lot about autistics. A lot of people are know-it-alls. And it's natural for humans to cling to certainty and to think we have the right answer. But usually there's multiple answers. And that leads us to another issue. If someone is in a position of power and is low empathy, they're not going to do well with autistics. They're going to be very direct and brutal and authoritarian, and they're not going to be sensitive to wants or needs. They're just going to basically get frustrated and angry or enraged even, and just punish autistics or anyone else who's not doing what they want, because they're making their life a little more difficult, or they have to do their job, but well, apparently they don't have to do their job, at least from their perspective, because a lot of times low empathy and laziness go very well. They go together very much, at least in my experience. So these are some of the things that autistic people typically face. Now, obviously, it's different with men and women. It's harder to detect in women, just because how we're hardwired, generally speaking. I mean, obviously, there's outliers and overlap, but in general, that's the way. Like, I can pick out an autistic guy within seconds usually. Women, as I said, it's more difficult, but I can usually pick them out too. And I can pick out low empathy people even more accurately, because I avoid them. Even if they're intelligent and such, most people don't have enough accompanying traits to make it worthwhile to be their friend or to be in their circle if they're low empathy. Some do, of course, but as I said, a lot of them do not. And empathy is one of the biggest indicators of antisocial behavior, or lack thereof, rather. High empathy can also lead to some problems. There are empathy disorders that kind of lead to losses of boundary and such. But and that is something that autistics have to deal with on average. Again, there's low empathy autistics as well, but in general, we have higher actual empathy, lower expressed empathy. So people think, oh, they're low empathy. No, we're not low empathy. Most of the people who are labeled as low empathy are actually just maladjusted. And you find that out later in life. Like, let's say there's a student who's autistic, diagnosed as autistic, and labeled, at least socially, as low empathy. Well, the thing is, they probably don't have as wide a circle of friends as most people, and they're probably misunderstood more often than most people, so that usually has a negative connotation, which leads to feeling rejected by one's peer group. And um, that's difficult. That's difficult for autistic people because we take things personally sometimes. We take things personally more often than a neurotypical will. So there's a couple of factors here. One, the fact that they're autistic and that they do think differently than other people and they process things differently than other people on more levels than just intelligence. Two, that many of us are maladjusted somewhat. I mean, a lot of humans are, but that comparison isn't useful. It's much more common in autistic people because most people are not autistic. Most people are neurologically normal-ish. So that's the second factor. And the third one is whether or not the person is able to pursue, if they're in an environment where, especially socially, where they can flourish, where they can be themselves. It doesn't mean pursue some kind of micro obsession. Exactly. That means that, as well as doing that, blossoming the social calendar and doing things that help in our own self-development. Now, self-development for everyone, autistics or not, is individualistic. It's not a group. It's not like a group consensus thing. It has to be individual. Otherwise, well, self isn't very distinctive from the group, so people are copying or something like that. Like I've gone through places. I've had conversations in person and online where people do not understand what I'm saying, even when I try to be as direct as possible or as simple as possible. They don't understand what I mean, and trying to explain it to these people is very, very difficult because usually that's an indication that someone's low empathy. So they're going to dismiss and diminish that which they've determined is, well, disfavorable, I guess. And that is their problem, but it becomes my problem as well because they're yet another person who is going to treat me like I'm stupid, even though I'm probably more intelligent than them in actuality. Again, this is an example of what happens regularly to a lot of autistic people. And now this isn't a pity party or anything like that. I'm trying to explain what it's like to be autistic and why what the nature of the challenges are, and why they are so deep rooted in society. Yes, so that's the first section. Now I'm going to be talking at some length on these on all three of these topics. But autism is the most personal for me because I'm autistic, and I've known autistic people, and there's some that I'm not sure. They might be a little on the spectrum, but it is genetic, by the way. And some people, it runs in the family. Some people might be on the spectrum, but it's hardly noticeable. But they have some of this neurological different divergence, if you will, and it's part of who they are. It's not just a defect. That's important to understand. The second part is life in general. Now, that's, well, it's interviews. It'll be interviews, people's personal philosophy, stories, um, personal growth. Personal growth is very, very important to me, and I like to see that in other people. I'm not one of those people who goes around competing with other people in a zero sum game type of way. I intend to be very successful in many metrics, but I've never been one to want other people to have less so I can have more. Exactly. That's not usually how it works. It's usually mutually advantageous situations can be had. Um, Anyways, that's been my experience. And I've noticed my perspective over many years has changed from one of survival necessity and sort of like believing that the cutthroat competition was necessary in the world, like it's just business type mentality, to one of abundance, growth, and collaboration. Now, obviously, not everyone can be collaborated with, and sometimes not even a minimal effort can be made because someone has demonstrated that they're an unethical business person, for example. Of course, and they're more than an anomaly, unfortunately, because bad eggs, bad fruit sticks together, sort of thing. Um, but yes, I think that mentality, well, I suppose it touches on spirituality, of course, because this is something about growing your own community, however small or large that may be. Most people are connected to a community, and that means that a certain amount of cooperation brings prosperity to everyone in more than ways than just financial. It affects personal life as well, and I think that's something that's very worthy of being discussed. In fact, these topics and others, life in general, if you will take up the majority of the podcast, I think. Now, people might say that the podcast is like certain episodes or certain topics may become more popular, like business. That's the third one. Business might become more popular, or autism might become more popular. But life is the one that this podcast is really about, because life connects both the other topics to the main theme. I would say that in terms of philosophy, I'm not sure what exact category this would go into, but I think it begins with the individual, like philosophy itself, the study, the practice, the applications, and then you learn from other people, and vice versa as well. But mostly, people discover through not through study at first, but through personal example, what their philosophy of life could be or should be, and then they either accept it for their own, or they become influenced by other people, and sort of just copy them. and that's unfortunately what happens. Now it might be functional enough, but that's, well, for me it's a tragedy. And we'll get into that, what that means, as time goes by. Now the third one, business. That's the third part of this podcast. Now, I think of business as an activity, or a great many activities rather. But the result of it, it's not just money. Money is simply a tool to me. I believe money. Well, no, it's not simply a tool. Money can elevate and exaggerate people's personality, or at least make it more noticeable. So if someone's bad, they're going to be really awful, even if they're not obvious about it. And if someone's good, they might touch greatness. They might become a great person. If someone's already great, well, the world may notice. Well, that's my analysis, anyways. But business is about relationships. Yes, quite simply, that's what it is. It's not about the products or services exactly. Those are what you do, not how you do it exactly. The how is about relationships, and that includes employees. That includes how management might interact with the people they're supervising. It's how the owners interact with everyone, and also how the company interacts with its customers and its vendors and everyone else. A lot of people follow the crowd, and that's all right. It means that they're doing something safe, probably, and that's all right. I don't really criticize people for not doing things my way specifically. I think that would be pretty narcissistic, in fact. But I do criticize people for not understanding what they're doing, like just winging it. Like if they have people that they're responsible for, like for employment, for example, I think they shouldn't just wing it. I think that's irresponsible. However, yes, it's their money, their business, their whatever, and their decision. Even though usually you can tell over time that something's, well, I mean, the world can kind of see the folly or success, I suppose. I certainly have some business theories. I'm just starting out. Right now, my business, I haven't incorporated yet. I got a bearded dragon, and I'm going to breed them, and I'm going to get cats, exotic cats, and breed them, and that should be the beginning of my business. Well, that is to say, once I start making money, that I'll consider the business to be, well, it will have hit a different level, let's say. Yeah, and I have quite a lot of ambitions, and I would really, yeah, I want people to see my progress and give me advice and witness my journey, in all three aspects, really, because as I said, the three aspects of this podcast are related to one another, because I'm the host who's autistic. It's mainly about life, and I'm a business person. So, again, I'm the consistent. Not all the episodes will deal with all three. Some will deal with just one. In fact, I believe most of them will. But yeah, it can definitely. I think it'll definitely be a long journey, and I think this will just be a continuous update thing, more than check in. But it's more of a life journal, if you will, my life's journal. So that's the way I look at it, and I'm very excited for all of this. I've been I've been looking forward to being an entrepreneur for a long time, and now that things are starting to take concrete form, it's I'm mostly excited. I'm not intimidated or afraid so much, although I think I have the full range. I think I'm experiencing the full range of human emotions. I suppose. And the other thing is, well, I've had pets for my whole life. And that's another thing. Autistics tend to have pets. They're more likely to have pets, that is to say, I've noticed. I think it's something to do with the empathy thing, but I don't know. All the animals, although they may be business assets, they're all going to be pets before anything else. And no matter how big we get, the employees, if I have employees, the employees will treat them like pets, or they'll have to find another place to work. That's a very, very serious thing for me. And pets mean family, essentially, or household members at least. Now, yes, I understand that pets aren't humans, but they're, I don't know. They've got a lot of things that make them relatable for humans. They have they have emotions, and they have their own personalities and preferences, and they have their own thoughts as well, which is, yeah. Sometimes we don't understand what they're expressing, but we do our best. Yeah. So yeah, and then of course this podcast will be part of all of that, which is awesome. I actually got this new computer the other day, which I've wanted a computer for a long time. This I have computers, but my desktop stopped working, and then the other one doesn't work very well, and then there's a third one that doesn't work so far. So I decided to get this after a time. I have an iPhone and an iPad, but this is well, it's really another level. It's much better than it's more versatile than a phone or a tablet. So, I'm really looking forward to the rest of this podcast, especially when I bring guests on. I think that'll be, um, I think that'll make it better, a lot better. And yes, so it'll be a great adventure, I think.